Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Sama, Seattle Circuit Music and Art. Did you know that Sama actually means heaven in Arabic? And also it's a kind of an honorific when you're addressing somebody who's teaching you in ancient Japanese. Like you see sensei or sifu in Chinese. That's what we're doing here. We're not teaching you per se, but we're offering and sharing artists and art and music from all over the world at these really interesting times. We've been doing Sama now for over a year. Started at the beginning of the pandemic. Now we're in some type of transition. If you were to speak to friends of ours in India or South America, they would not say there's any transition, but we're hoping that we can get through this and we can get back to live shows, back to travel, back to being around each other, and hopefully better human beings having gone through this. I'm Derek Mazzoni. I am the host of Sama. You can find us here every single week. We're streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. We have videos on TikTok and also on Twitter and many more places. We got a special edition of Sama tonight. We're going to be speaking with Graham Daniels, who is part of Addictive TV. They're digital artists known for their movie supercuts and creation of audiovisual remix material. They've been doing this for a long time, and they've been doing just about every single facet of this. They've recut major features, music videos. They've done a really interesting work, community-focused work, and cultural-focused work. I've been playing their music on my radio show, and I'm playing their music in my DJ sets. The most recent work is Orchestra of Samples, which is a powerful and fascinating tale of the times that we're in. And I'm going to share that with you in just a flash. We're going to be talking to Graham. But first, I want to share with you some work that they've done before. This is a piece called Drum and Dogs.
Bring up. Set. Yeah. Take 18.
Addictive TV, Drums and Dogs. I love that work. And I didn't know who these cats were until recently as I was playing their music. They're way more than that and deeper. And so right now we got Graham Daniels, Addictive TV. How's it going?
Hello, Seattle. Well,
Hello,
actually,
London. It's always weird.
Yeah.
It's like a Spinal Tap moment. Hey, Cleveland. It's like, okay, how you doing?
Hello. Where are we?
Where are we? We're in ether space right now. Graham, thanks for being here.
Thank you. And thanks for sharing our work.
That's beautiful work, and we got a lot to talk about. But I wanted to go a little into culture. Now, you created this piece for your community, for London, and you created this as a cultural manifestation. And so, can you tell me what evolved you from, how would you say, club denizen with your pint or whatever at 4 a.m. making videos and VJ sessions for sweaty, ecstasy-driven lunatics, which I love to pieces. Can't wait to be back amongst them. To creating these kind of cultural pieces. What's your origin story there, Graham Daniels of Addictive TV?
Heavy, man. My origin story, yeah, it's always been that. We haven't just suddenly kind of one day wanted to get into doing this kind of thing. We've always been sort of very culturally aware in that kind of sense, even way back in the day when
How? I mean, you've been at this for a long time, and nobody wakes up culturally aware. You're just like, what's tomorrow going to be like? Do I have enough money for just to get
I think
through?
it's because probably my parents and the way that I was brought up.
Okay.
And like yourself, I'm actually, no, you're first generation immigrant in that sense. I'm second generation in that my grandparents were Polish and came to the UK. And then in fact, even before that, which is another long story, my family were Portuguese. And so it's kind of, and on the other side is Russian. So it's kind of always been of that sort of mindset. And growing up, my parents always took in kind of students, foreign exchange students. And so I lived in a house that was just always full of people, and not just my brother and two sisters, because there were four of us as kids. So it was always a household full of people. And in fact, my best friend, who I still know now, who I first met skateboarding when I was about 10 years old, he'd sort of say, yes, that's what happened. He pretty much like was living with us as well. And he was always coming around for dinner. And he was, I mean, in those days, they used to call us latchkey kids, where, you did like your own thing in that sort of sense. And my parents were very, very kind of open-minded in that sort of sense. And they were never like, oh, it's 7 o'clock, you've got to be. So, even at 10 years old, I was like catching the bus and going somewhere with our friends and in that kind of sense. And so I was always very kind of open-minded and culturally aware in that sort of sense. And coming from East London, I was born and grew up in the East End of London. So, it wasn't like, a lot of kind of, depending on where you come from, you might be kind of the only white kid in a classroom. I certainly never was. And so from a very, very early age, sort of other cultures are always very, very prevalent and present in my life. And so that's what I mean by I've always sort of been of that sort of mind. So. Okay,
I understand. Perfect. Thanks for sharing. So you're legit. East London, you didn't come from like a crap load of money and just like, I'm going to be amongst these interesting people from different colors and everything.
There's a phrase that they call people in the UK sometimes like that, where they call them mockneys, where when you sort of have certain kind of artists who people often joke about, what you mentioned earlier about Jamie Oliver. People might often joke about him being, say, a mockney. I mean, I don't know his personal background, but you often get kind of artists that are like, yeah, down with it, but
got it.
Not, and they might have gone to private school and this kind of thing. Whereas no. I didn't even get to university, so there you go.
I get it. It's the what do they call them? I think it was the Idols, maybe said like the Mercedes Marxists.
Yeah. Well, in the UK, they call that champagne socialists.
Okay, yes.
Champagne socialism. It's that same. Yeah, that's definitely no. I mean, I'm very much from that kind of working class sort of background, and so no, I think my roots are still still there, despite the fact my parents moved away and I grew up in a town called Brighton. I then came back to kind of where we are. And so now, I mean, I live quite close to kind of where I was born and brought up. And so,
okay.
Yeah. And in fact, the drum and dogs video that you just showed was for an area of London called Newham, which is where the Royal Docks are. And it's a very kind of working class immigrant kind of area still. And one of the reasons, one of the things that when we pitched for that, because it was like an open call, and the artists had to pitch in. One of the things I think they seemed to really like was the fact that I was actually from, I was a local artist.
Yeah.
Since I don't live here, I was born here, and I think they kind of quite liked the fact that it's like not someone who was born here who moved away.
Got it. Okay. Now this is interesting because this is a different subject matter. I didn't think I would go here, but let's talk about this because you're an artist, but your beginning is in clubs. Which is its own particular culture, but that's it. It's the nighttime, people getting crazy. It's beautiful. We miss it, but it's that club mentality. And now, as an artist, I don't want to over project, but I'll do it anyway. You're evolving. You're still an artist. It's not like there's a whole bunch of like DJs. I used to do that. Now I'm a banker. I used to do that. Now I write code, which is an art form in itself. But now you're actually presenting this art form. You're taking this art form and you're applying it to cultural expression. You're applying it into that space that lives in mostly European countries, where we're going to bring all of these members of these communities and we're creating an artistic rendition of this that presents the reality of our city or our region right now. Like a town like London is incredibly diverse. There's a huge multiculturalism, and you're seeing this in big cities all over. But it's interesting how you're taking your art form and applying it in this kind of setting, where in the past it would be, we paint a mural, or we build a sculpture, or we have poetry, all beautiful works. My tone was so sarcastic, I didn't mean to be. But it was like for you to actually go like, hey, we're going to make a video. There's going to be a bunch of musicians and drummers playing on the docks. So we're going to get this. That's an interesting place to be because it's an interesting way to pitch it. It's an interesting way to present it. And it's an interesting way to find an audience of the people who are making those choices. There's the council, I guess we would call it there, of somebody who's like, what about the mural? What about the fair that we're used to do? So how did you kind of like make that happen? How do you like take this thing that lives in clubs, sweat, great, beautiful, and put it in like, no, we're going to take this and we're going to put it into the arena for the art that we on par with other cultural representations.
I guess I don't really look at it that way. I guess is the easy.
All right, tell me how you look at it.
That's difficult to explain in that sort of sense. It's just the way I see the world.
Okay.
in that.
How do you see the world?
When something like that happened, and they were looking for ideas. They sent out these open calls, and it said that they were looking for ideas that utilised the Royal Docks, because the Royal Docks, despite the word royal being in there, for anyone listening and watching around the world, it's not some
that's where the yacht comes and everybody comes.
Yeah, no, it's nothing to do with kind of it's the Royal Docks, because it was many years ago. In fact, it's got a in some ways a bad history because of colonialism and everything, of where the East India Dock, and all the tea and then everything. That's where it all came in, and those were the docks. And at one point, I think it was the biggest enclosed docks in the world. I mean, I'm not an expert. But now, as it happens, it's I think the largest regeneration program in the UK and one of the largest in Europe. I mean, if you go down there, it's just the whole area is building sites, and over kind of the last 20 years, it became quite a kind of poverty-stricken kind of area, and that wasn't, it was all just closed because after a lot of the actual docks themselves closed, and boats don't go in there. They're not docks anymore. I mean, there is no. There's some of the old warehouses are kind of abandoned and blah blah blah.
Okay.
Some of them are turned into kind of offices, and some of them 10 years ago that's where kind of cool parties were. In fact, actually, I don't think the council were probably that pleased about it, but I think it was only about 2-3 months ago, during kind of the middle of terrible lockdown when during obviously the pandemic, there was a big illegal rave in one of the warehouses.
I heard about this. I was interviewing Kruder and Dorfmeister for another project, and they were like, "This is crazy."
Yeah, they arrested God knows how many people and fined them thousands and thousands of pounds. And
what are you doing?
But yeah, that gives you the idea of a picture of what the place is like, despite the word royal. But part of it is also really, really, really nice, where they've rebuilt sections.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's this incredible, in fact, you saw it in the video, there's incredible building that was built there that then sat empty for quite a number of years. And in fact, the Mayor of London's office next year at some point is moving into this building. So the whole kind of London government, as it were, the offices for the Mayor of London is going to move right into the Royal Docks. And so again, it's all part of this regeneration. So the area is, is kind of improving.
It's coming back. Okay, cool. Thank you. But the fact that you're in it, that you're part of that conversation. You've evolved from a club VJ kid to being part of this. The reality of what's happening right now, and as far as the evolution of London culture, the different populations. Let's go. We could talk for hours, but let's go to our journeys, okay?
Okay, yeah, it's a good link.
Addictive TV on Sama.
Our journeys, all so different. Where we end up, who knows? Where we started, that's what shows. Each of us from poles apart, mismatched together like a beautiful work of art. We pitched up our tents in Brent, at first divergent, opposed, but now a family grows. With tender natures and caring souls, we try our best to be inclusive, but sometimes we miss the mark. Does that make us abusive?
Lovely work, really lovely work, and I keep trying to stress. Anyway, this is Sama, Sales Record Music and Art. I'm here with Graham Daniels at TV. Thanks everybody for watching and giving a shout out. You've been doing this for a while, so you got fans, and everybody likes the evolution of your work. And this is one of the things that I wanted to stress with this. That's lovely. That's sublime. I'm not stroking your back, but it's nice. It's not. You can do things that aren't just frenetic, and just add to the power of a DJ set. Even though you can do that, that's how I got turned on to you guys. It's like, wow, this works. This works visually, and it also works audioly, sonically, orally, sonically. So I'm curious. Tell me how you we talked about a little bit of your origin.
Go and watch that. It's actually a documentary. That's only kind of the trailer that's made up.
You did the whole doc?
Yeah. It's a whole 30-minute documentary that I directed that we made last year, that we produced. That in fact, the story behind that, which you'll be pleased to know, that is definitely a kind of arc and development, is that was developed as a live cinema project. That was actually meant to be performed at the what's the name of the theatre? The Kiln Theatre in Kilburn in West London. Because last year, 2020, was the London Borough of Culture was in Brent, and they have a bit like there's a thing in Europe they do called the European Capital of Culture, and every few years it's a different city, and a bit like sort of the Olympics, it attracts sort of funding, and then you get a lot of artists and productions and people doing stuff. Is that London has been doing it for a couple of years, where they've wanted to have a London Borough of Culture, and a borough is essentially like an area of London, and London has 30 something boroughs, and they wanted to have they want to have one every year that's a different borough. So it kind of enables people to move about, experience culture in different parts of London, etc., etc. And also, if tourists come here, they can go not just to the, you know, the West End or to the, you know, Shoreditch in East London, to the cool places. They can check out other places. And last year it was Brent, and we were working with a charity there, the Asian People's Disability Alliance, that we've done work with before. And we said to them a couple of years ago, we said, oh, you know that, you know, in a couple of years, the Borough of Culture is going to be Brent, where you're based. Why don't we come up with an idea and pitch a project together? And that's kind of where that project came from, in that it was mainly based on interviewing a lot of their residents. And then it began to become a bit wider and encapsulate kind of interesting stories from other elderly residents. But the idea, it's about migrants, and it was all about kind of not recent migrants. The idea being, because often there are so many projects about kind of people that have come here in the last sort of 10 years or so because of wars and this kind of thing. What often people don't look at is how that has that migration isn't obviously a new thing. It's been going on for, you know, thousands of years. But there's a lot of migration into the UK, say like in the 1950s and 1960s and 70s. And a lot of those migrants are quite elderly now. And so the idea behind the project was to take these interviews and get them to tell the stories of their lives, of how they came here. And then we would pick interesting stories out and then build music around it and perform the whole thing with video. So it was like a live cinema documentary. And we were working, and in fact, because we did the soundtrack as well, and some of the music on there is by 3 blind musicians that we've also done a lot of work with, who, in fact, we also toured India with, but that's another story for another project. But and so they were going to perform the project live with us, and then because of the whole pandemic, and we were commissioned just before it was, I think it was 2019, and it was November-ish, December-ish, that we actually found out, and so we had a whole year to make the project. And then, of course, we started to make it in kind of like February, March, and then there was lockdowns and the pandemic, and the whole thing had to change because theatres were closed, etc., etc. We lost the partner there, and so we had to change our plans. And poor old Brent, they ended up having to, you know, because the European Football League, the Euros, were meant to be held at Wembley that year. If people have heard of Wembley Stadium, and that's in the heart of Brent, and they were going to do a big street party, all connected to the Euro championships, etc., etc. And all of that had to be cancelled. Lots and lots of people's projects were cancelled. We're lucky that it wasn't cancelled, and they just said, "What can you do?" Because obviously you can't perform it. And we said, "Well, we've shot like half of it. We still need to do a bit more." And then we had to wait until lockdown eased in the summer last year, and that was when, you know, you weren't allowed to meet up more with a handful of people. Just myself and Francois, just a couple of us went and we shot the rest of it ourselves, and then we had to kind of match the footage, and then edited it, did a lot of the music over Zoom with my partners that I was doing it with. And so it was quite kind of difficult in that sort of sense. And then, and then we finished it, and we still kind of had to do a sharing event. We did it online and this kind of thing. But yeah, it's a 30-minute documentary, and it's quite moving. Some of the stories are, without giving too much away, they're very, 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 emotional and very moving.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people who saw it, it said it made them cry, and it's...
That's exactly what we want right now.
Yeah, it's I do say to people, please go and see. Sorry, I'm talking into
no.
So go and watch. It's on YouTube, and go and get those numbers up. Leave comments, and it's a very worthwhile project. But so that's kind of where that came from. That project.
Perfect. That's a great story, but it also speaks to your evolution as an artist, and this is one of the things that also. I try to stress in doing these live streams and these videos around it. It's like you're telling a story right now of the plans that were made, and then suddenly, boom, we have a pandemic. Those plans done. But how do you survive? How do you what do you do in that kind of situation? There's an incredible amount of pressure. We're still in this pandemic. We just talked about India and Brazil and others. But how did you, as an artist, as a human being, how did you weather this? How are you weathering this?
Are we weathering the storm? Like a lot of people, we're just pitching and pitching and pitching. I think that it's become incredibly competitive, even more so competitive. A lot of arts bodies and local councils and some companies even, they are kind of offering kind of grants and bursaries, and they're looking for projects. And so there is support for artists in that sense, but it's it's incredibly competitive. We were very lucky that we got the Borough of Culture project just before this had happened, and we were already making it. And so we had, we still finished it. We were still paid. The Drum and Docs video you saw earlier, that was again pitched during the pandemic. We were fortunate enough to be one of them commissioned. And yeah, it's just continuing like that. In fact, only yesterday, it's another long story, but we've just been commissioned for another project yesterday. That's why I had to spend a lot of the day yesterday going through contracts and stuff and sorting it out. But it's to do with, I'm trying to explain it without giving too much away. It's to do with a European-wide project about refugees all across Europe. And we're part of the project with some poets. And it's a project about gathering refugee musicians and the instruments they're bringing from their cultures from different places. And it's, again, based on the fact that Orchestra of Samples and the commissioning body really liked what we were doing, the arts body who are based in the north of England.
All right, perfect.
And saw it, liked it, and finally, yeah, we've just been given the green light.
Dude, so, I like it. I want to do a whole series on that. That's awesome. That's beautiful work. Graham, you're succeeding at life. Well done. Well done.
I don't know. I just do what I do. I wouldn't say I'm. I think success is very, very relative.
You're helping. You're helping. You're telling stories about artists. You're telling stories about refugee artists. You're telling stories about your home. That's success. That seriously is like, I live in Seattle. I know too many billionaires from somebody who comes from the background I come from as an immigrant.
Yeah.
No, you're doing.
I prefer to wear old clothes. I wear a lot of secondhand clothes. I drive an old secondhand car. In that sort of sense, I think that success is as long as you can do what it is you want to do, as long as you can put food on the table, as long as you're healthy in mind and body, that's successful. I mean, personally speaking, actually, God, we're really going off topic now.
We are going off topic, but that's what I like to do here. It's like, why not? It's like,
I mean, I have to deal with diabetes on a daily basis, but it's like, and so again, it's one of those things. I have to make sure that I eat the right thing.
Look about transmutating that into, you could have gone into like, I have to deal with diabetes. I hate everybody. It's not fair.
Yes, and I had met other people that are doing that. I mean, God, this really isn't where I expected this interview to go. One of the biggest challenges with something like diabetes for somebody like myself is the traveling. And before pre-COVID times, we were doing a hell of a lot of gigs, and every other week we're flying to some different part of the planet, which is where Orchestra of Samples came from. And
we'll get there. We'll get there inevitably.
But dealing with that was very, very difficult at first with it because obviously your blood sugars drop down and that kind of thing. And I know other people that and of course in the early days when you get something like that, a condition like that, you go to some meetings, you meet other people, and a lot of people who did travel just gave it up, and they said, "Oh God, I'm really scared of traveling. God, I couldn't travel because if I'm on an aeroplane and I suddenly, go hypoglycemic and blah 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 blah," which is very, very serious, and you can pass into a coma and die, and this kind of thing happens every day. And so I can see why some people wouldn't want to deal with that. But for me, I suppose I'm more headstrong in that sense that I just thought, no, I'm not going to let a condition like that control me. I control it. And so, as long as you travel with food and you've got tons of like bars on you and you got that sort of thing, you take some fruit and you keep to time schedules and you take any tablets you got and you keep them with you. And it's just being sensible. It's just being very, very kind of sensible and organized and that kind of thing. And then when we were often, promoters would sort of say, do you want to send us the sort of flights you want us to get? We'd look at the flights and we'd always try and choose flights around, ideally, when you can eat, when you can get some sleep, when you're not kind of,
Yeah.
But occasionally, of course, that doesn't happen, and you travel for 24 hours without sleep, and you do one gig one side of the planet and another one on the other side of the planet. But yeah, you still have to look after yourself. And in all the years, I only ever had one hypoglycemic episode that happened.
Wow.
For a gig, and that was really unpleasant. But we still went and did the show and blah 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 blah.
Wow. Okay. Well, it tells me that you've got a head on your shoulders and you're also inspired. You're doing this because something is inspiring you to go to transcend that feeling. Okay. All right. So let's go into Orchestra of Samples. I want to play behind the scenes, but why don't you give me a brief description of this, the most recent project. There it is.
There it is. I happen to have the vinyl here.
You got vinyl? You didn't tell me that. Look at you.
Yeah. And it's double vinyl. There's two, and this was recorded, especially, or rather pressed, at 45 RPM. So you play it faster for better quality. But yeah. But
where's the vinyl available?
Is it
Bandcamp?
Sorry, I'm just talking. Is there any still on Bandcamp? There's probably some still.
There's only like 3 left.
There's only about 3 left of which I'm told. But that was because it was released with the German label K7, and then when they finished their stock, and we decided to only be in a 3-year deal with them, and then the deal was up, and then we got the right, and so then we just recently digitally distributed it ourselves. Okay. Which
the record is lovely. I've been playing it, and it's more than just the music. It's the story of well, let's let people watch this, and then we'll explain, because we could talk about this, and it's like, what the hell are you talking about? All right, Addictive TV on Sama.
Rolling. Take 7. This is the second duduk.
Just while it's in my head, the bit where you went about here. Could you repeat the same thing but higher up? So it's
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay, it's very short session. Take 4. A couple of fast sort of. Okay.
Start lower and then take it higher.
Blacklisté sur multipiste, je blackstar ma misère. Et les pervers se mettent à l'amende. Et moi j'ai pas de papier clandestin sous le terrain, je suis nègre avec l'attitude underground. Je suis NWA, j'ai mon doctorat Dre. Mais ma musique fait pas trop de blé, à croire que j'ai pas le flow à clair.
这2根弦，这2个弦，2个钢弦。
I don't know if I can translate this properly.
啊，解释这把琴呢？
We'll keep it very short.
可以吗？这个2胡的曲子，这算快的了。还有
This is all very, very, very good.
That's beautiful work.
Thank you.
Really beautiful work.
I actually cut that really for more to talk over, because otherwise, so you could have shown that and I could have explained what was happening.
But based on the conversation we just had and what you shared about yourself, I kind of wanted to. It shows what you go through to make your vision come to life, and it's beautiful. And the fact that you're traveling, and like I love the fact that I traveled, hope to again, all over the world too. And it's like I love. I guess you were in China with the erhu. Was that an erhu that he was playing?
Yeah, in Beijing.
In Beijing. So with the fixer / translator, not being able to answer that, I love that, because you get somebody who's like, they're great. It's like, especially
that was actually the young guy was the promoter of the event that he was bringing us over to, and we said, it'd be really great if you could find somebody to film. And the gentleman playing the erhu, that was actually his father.
Oh, great!
And that's why Ziggy, the young guy, he found it quite difficult to find people who kind of understood what it was we were talking about doing. And so in the end, he just said, "Look, Dad, can you effectively come down, meet these crazy Brits, and just sort of let them record you?" And and I actually, that leads to, again, wasn't something I would have said. Sorry, but again, what proves the understanding of power of sound and image was that we did a gig there, and after the gig, everybody had left the dressing room. They also bizarrely left me on my own with Ziggy's father, with the guy playing the erhu.
Mm-hmm.
It's no English, I speak no Mandarin, and or Cantonese, and the pair of us are just in this room, and it's that awkward sort of like, you don't speak my language, I don't speak your language, and what do we do? And you're sitting there smiling at each other and nodding, and it just occurred to me, I could pictorially show, and so I showed some of the footage that we'd shot of him, and he was sort of saying good, and then I showed him a map of the world, and luckily there was good Wi-Fi, so I had my laptop, and so I was showing him little bits of footage of what we'd recorded in different parts of the world, and then I showed him some of the work from Orchestra of Samples. So he kind of understood that we were going to sample him with him. I mean, this was a few hours after we'd recorded the erhu in a park in Beijing with him, and he was like, "Wow, yeah, really good, really good." And so he completely understood, because I was just showing him pictures of kind of what we would end up doing with it. And so yeah, it's but some of that, it's some of it we have sampled, some of it we haven't still yet sampled. It's very, as you could see in the footage, the whole project, despite we hope it looks, I hope people like the way it looks.
It looks beautiful.
Oh, thank you. It's quite DIY in the sense that we're traveling very, very minimally. We're taking just a Canon 5D sort of camera. And in the early days, many years ago, we were shooting with a Sony VH1 camera. So yeah, and with a little Tascam, and so we're trying to always find quiet places. It's not always possible. If you listen very carefully, say to the track East to West, where you had the erhu, you can kind of hear birds sort of going in the background, but it kind of adds to it. And so yeah, I mean, a lot of the time we have to shoot where we can, where we're given. It's been in everywhere from parks, rooftops, sort of people's back gardens. Sometimes it's been like you saw the guy playing the zither-like instrument called a kachapi thing. That was in an art center in Surakarta in Indonesia, and incredibly, when we were there, we were working on a project for the British Council, funnily enough, about recording musicians there, indigenous kind of musicians. And while we were there, we wanted to record as many people as we could. And Francoise, who you met the other, who spoke to the other,
it was great.
It was the morning we'd arrived, and we were free. And she looked and just said, "Oh, there's like an independent art centre that's really close to kind of like not far from where we are at the hotel where we were, and you could get sort of a little kind of rickshaw tuk-tuk thing for and it was like maybe 10 minutes or something." And we went there, didn't obviously know them, had never been there before, hadn't spoken to anybody. Spoke to a couple of people. Eventually, we were shown to the manager guy who was running the place, the programmer. And I mean, that's again wonders of modern technology. We were able to show him some of our work on our phone, and then go online, show him the blog, and he just loved the project and said, wow, this is really innovative, very, very clever.
Yeah.
And he said, would you want me to organize some musicians for you? And we said, oh, we would love it. It would be like 1 or 2. And he organized 6 musicians for us. And we arranged a day that we would come back like 4 days later. And we came back and and we recorded. And in fact, Gong Gong, the guy playing the kechapi, I don't know if you've ever heard of Shushila Rama, the singer. And she, I mean, she tours the world. But he's one of her musicians. And whenever she records in Indonesia, and I think Ghost Gamelan on her last album, he was on, and he's played it everywhere from, the Royal Festival Hall in London to the Sydney Opera House, that chap. But yeah, he's Indonesian, lives in Surakarta. And again, chance, luck, he liked the project. He was a friend of the guy who ran the art centre. They were all ethnomusicology students from the art school there and the music school. And it was great. And so we recorded a whole bunch of people. We've only sampled a couple of them so far. It's often about serendipity, not just in the music making in terms of figuring out whose sample fits with who. It's about just who you meet on the road, who introduces you to somebody else. Up until 3 minutes before we record something, we often don't know who it is. We don't know what instrument they're playing.
That's part of the magic, though. I could see that, but I could also see that you're actually you've got something in mind. It's not like just play something and we'll make something work. You're actually directing to get a particular sound.
We have to kind of. I mean, sometimes. I mean, there's so much kind of like. There's also a junk stored in here, but at the same time, I've got there's half completed tracks and there's bits of stuff sort of in your head, but at the same time. It's not just that. There's other samples. There's a great sample of instrument X that we've not used that I kind of know roughly the tempo, roughly kind of how it goes. But also it's more just listening. And so when somebody's just playing something and you just hear, oh, I really liked the bit that went dun, dun, ba-da-da-da, dun, dun, and they'll go, oh, what did I do? And I say you went bam, bam, ba-da, bam, bam, ba-da. And that's why I was saying, oh, could you? And the guy playing the angklung. Which is quite an interesting instrument. I was saying, could you do it a bit further up and so you could change up? And he was saying, oh yeah, like this. And so a lot of it's a two-way process in that kind of sense. But they are all improvising. The music is all created afterwards through sampling. So it's not like they're saying, oh, here's a completed track. Please listen to this and just play guitar over the top. So and that's the beauty of the serendipity part that comes into the making of the project, where you're finding things that you genuinely would never have thought would go together or that you ever think would. I mean, for most people making any kind of music, you would never sit there and go, I really think we should use a Japanese koto and put it with a Turkish tambur. I reckon that'll be, you just generally wouldn't. But because we've kind of got those recordings that you sort of go, oh, they fit together. This little bit and this bit fit together. And
you're witnessing, you're seeing, and you're actually able to concoct something in a way that would never exist in any other form.
Yes,
but
exactly.
But that's the magic, and that's one of the main reasons that I have you on Sama right now, is that through this project you've been able to actually celebrate these cultures, celebrate the diversity of these cultures. But yet, I'm quoting a German philosopher, I can't remember the name, but all of this work leads to this feeling of a shared humanity, where it's not the isolated thing here and there. It's like those are beautiful and they should be celebrated, but we're all human beings. We're all creating a form here, and it's that duality of the two. I love what you're doing. Please continue to do that. Please evolve it, but also know that we're all on this one sphere together here, and all of these things add to our shared humanity, and to lead us, which leads me to another point that I wanted to stress with this is, you've been at this game for a long time, and you've been at this game at a time when video was a unique thing. You'd go to a club, I remember, there used to be like slide projectors, and that was the thing that you saw, because projectors were super expensive. I remember like super early, people had, Super 8 projectors going on. And then suddenly
film loops, the physical film loops.
The physical film loop going, and it was great. It was on top of each other, like old school. And that was for a long time. And then suddenly video became more, it was, like 8-bit little pieces, but suddenly you see stuff was going on. And then, this is a historical lesson, but suddenly you had things here, a little example, you had these kind of phones, and then suddenly you have these kind of phones, and these are movie screens. These are this is a whole bunch of stuff here, and it's not like a movie, like one setting. You've got platforms, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, wherever we are right now, that take video. That's the form of communication that's going on right now globally. Everybody's got more or less one of these things.
Yeah.
So you, Graham Daniels, Addictive Television, have been at this thing for a long time. You now have a freaking encyclopedia of content, of really powerful content from all over the world. I hate saying content because it's so corporatized, but you've got all this artwork.
I know what you mean.
And you should, I'll say this as a peer, you should put that stuff out on all of these platforms in various forms. It's not even about like, okay, watch the whole thing. It's really like you've done, like we just saw a whole section of things that you've done. Like here's a thing in Indonesia, here's a thing with this air hoop player's dad and the promoter of his dad playing in Beijing. All of these things are beautiful little stories.
Yeah.
But tied to this, they need to be shared. And I had this conversation with my wife this morning because she was like, not everybody needs to be like you, has to do this thing. I was like, no, they don't need to be like me. But I feel like with Graham, this is kind of like part of his charter now, where you don't know where these musicians are. You don't know where this instrument could be. It could be dying out, whatever that means, or it could be evolving. But you have taken it upon yourself to archive all this. Now I am asking you, Graham Daniels, to share it. Not
actually. I should point out, actually, there's a very good time to interject just to say, in fact, that's one of the reasons, funnily enough, I'm just having one of those days of lots and lots of live kind of internet streaming calls, is that the 10, 15 minutes before I jumped on this with you, I just had to do, we were part of a big kind of roundtable conference with the UNESCO and the European Humanities Conference 2021. And part of it is because they were asking artists who are doing work that is very human in nature and so on and so forth, that are making kind of an impact in that sense. And they really like what it is we're doing. And one of the things that they really liked about Orchestra of Samples, exactly as you just said, is the element of instrument preservation, even though that was never one of kind of the initial sort of reasonings behind the project. It's clearly developed into that. And just again, happenstance, that over the years of recording, slowly bit by bit, we were recording quite a number of the instruments that are on UNESCO's intangible cultural heritage endangered list of instruments that not enough people are playing, and they're slowly dying out, as you say. And it was not so long ago that we did a performance in France, and somebody from UNESCO was there, saw it, absolutely loved it, and loved the whole ethos behind the project. And they asked me to write an article for their Humanities, Arts and Society magazine, which came out last year. Again, if you go to our site, you can click and it links through to the article. Okay. And we were supposed to perform at the launch of that magazine at UNESCO's headquarters, and sadly the pandemic and blah blah blah, and the whole thing got cancelled. But then that's why they asked us this year to nicely be part of it. It just so happened to fall on the same day that I was doing this with you, and the timing just dovetailed just about enough to jump from one to the other. But similarly, a lot of the people were commenting online saying exactly what you were saying, and the whole thing about preservation and introducing people to instruments they didn't know of. Yeah,
and their stories, because it's one thing to 20 years ago where you had limited deliveries of this, maybe a movie house, maybe HBO or something. Now it's everywhere. Like it boggles the mind. If you were to take me back 20 years and say this was the future, I'd be like, you are tripping. That's just,
that's the thing. I think 20 years ago, you could have done this project, but it would have just cost a fortune.
Yeah.
It would have been like, Koyana Scatzi or any of those that just cost an absolute fortune. Whereas I think a lot of kind of digital media just makes it much simpler, easier to, to travel and shoot and have good quality material, and also a lot of software with noise reduction and this kind of thing. If you are recording and doing field recordings in places that aren't, ideal in terms of sound recording. But I think that for me, again, one of the beauties is that, as you say, behind every story, behind every sample is a story. Every time, you see people on screen. And I remember a gig we did years ago somewhere where somebody came up to us afterwards and they just simply couldn't believe, they genuinely couldn't believe that we'd recorded all of this. And they said, well, where did you get did you just download it all off YouTube or something? And we said, no, of course not. We've recorded like over years and years and years, all of these people. I was personally behind the camera of every single sample that you see. Yeah. And people were like, wow. And I think sometimes they don't quite get the scope and the enormity of the project in that kind of sense. It is a very personal kind of project. And that's why even the blog, if you go to the website and you see there's like hundreds and hundreds of entries of all the musicians we've recorded and all documented, it's all very personal because, we met them all. And a lot of them we're friends with now. We stay in touch with pretty much everybody. Like you say, where is that instrument now? We do know physically where some of those are. But also it's quite good that some of them who don't quite understand what it is we're doing still are really interested in it. And that's one thing that early on in the project, I was quite surprised that I thought we may come against some kind of resistance from purists, people who are very much into kind of, certain types of world music, who would say, oh, it's terrible what you're doing and you're sampling exactly. And it's like not pure. And it's, but there was somebody who, Christoph Rosenberg, who he's one of the heads of department at the Cité de la Musique in Paris, and he looks after all their instrument collection, and he does a lot of all the educational programming there. And he's in the project as well. We recorded him. He really liked what we were doing, and we did something for him once. And he said, "I'd love to be part of your project." And we did an interview for the French press at one point, and they said, "Oh, could you put us in touch with some of the people who you've recorded that are based in France that we could interview?" So he was one of them that we gave to this paper. And then when we read the article, when it came out, what he said was just so nice. And he obviously got it in a nutshell. And he said they put the, Addictive TV are putting the musicians at the heart of this project. They are absolutely, the core of it. So it's not we're just coming up with some, and then just sort of putting a bit of a flute sample over the top.
Yeah. Been there, done that.
We are absolutely like being in the dark, trying to do a puzzle in the dark, feeling the pieces and trying to kind of put the pieces together and not knowing what the picture is, and just doing it by trial and error. And because it's the only way, in some senses, you can find what samples work together. And so that was really good that someone like that had said, because he obviously understood that the musicians for us are absolutely the key and the nub of it. And that's why over the years, it's been fascinating and great when you do meet people that are not the kind of people who ever, even as you say, would have been part of that clubbing scene. They're not from that background at all. They're very much into, early music, 13th century instruments and this kind of thing.
Super nerds.
Yeah, but they still are really, really into the project and the way that their instrument has been sampled and added, with another musician, and it's, and in fact, in that last clip you saw of the guy in Indonesia playing the red kecapi, the stringed instrument, you saw next to him, there's an Indian guy, a Tamil guy from Tamil Nadu down south called Parthiban, who played what's called a nadaswaram. And it's a very specialized double-reeded instrument that it's mainly used in sort of religious and ceremonies. But he plays it in quite a contemporary way. And after we sampled him, because he spoke no English and I didn't speak any Tamil, and a friend of mine who's Tamil and lives there, he was explaining to him, what we needed, and we recorded him, took these takes, cut it up, made that track, sent him the track afterwards, and he just sort of sent this message back, sort of in Tamil, which kind of didn't make sense, and we had to get it, send it to my friend to get it translated. But he said, "Oh, great, you found somebody playing a nadaswaram." And he didn't realize that it was him. So I had to write back and go, no, this is you. This is what we recorded with you. And he wrote back saying, but I didn't play that. And I think that's what's the beauty, is that so many musicians often are stunned at kind of what we've ended up cutting up and making them appear to be playing. And it's, you know, they've got to have a lot of trust in us, and they do. They all say, yes, absolutely, record us, take the stuff and do something, you know, beautiful with it.
You're in an interesting place, and it's an evolving place, because A, you've got the trust, B, you've got the pedigree, so you know what you're doing, and 3, the work is can be transcendent, and it transcended in a way that it's like it's more than a sum of its parts.
Yes.
It lives in audio, it lives in video, and going back to my initial point, it can and should live on multitudes of platforms, and in all different forms. It doesn't need to be that process you were talking about certain, I love ethnomusicologists, I don't want to give them bad mouth, but like certain ones are like, the music must be pure or it's wrong, or it has to live on a particular pedestal and needs to be there. It doesn't. That's like a boomer mentality we stay in the States here right now. It's just like it's moving so quickly, it's evolving so quickly, and if your intention is to share and transcend and to create opportunities for people to open up their hearts, to fight back against xenophobia, stupidity, fascism, whatever form you're using this form, then it's up to you to actually share it and make it available. It's kind of like, I don't know what you need to do, but just kind of like loosen up loosen the controls and just let's see what happens in that space. And it seems that, you know,
we've started making some of the samples available, even on our website, if you click on the remix section, because we want people to download them and make their own remixes and you know, do something creative with them. Perfect.
That's perfect. So it's
we need to do more of that.
I mean, this is just the beginning of this, I feel like, because this the record's out and it's good. More people are going to find out about it. Go to Bandcamp, Addictive TV, because that's the way that these artists are actually able to make money off of their music. And then Graham Daniels, this is good work. Thank you. And please thank Cresswas also for making this happen, putting this put together. Thank you.
Before I disappear, I should say, please go out and download, go to Bandcamp, buy Return of Django, which is our new single that's just come out.
Which we're gonna be finishing with this right now. We'll have all of that in the edit of this thing for live stream. It's just you and I and Francois.
Visit the blog, visit the site. You know, totally. Blah 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 blah.
This goes way beyond that. I mean, you've been busy. Both of you have been busy. This is not like I got a day job and I'm going to be doing this. This is your life, and it's obvious that you can see that this is what you do. Okay, this is awesome. Thank you so much. Let's see. We've got a special surprise next week. Everybody out there on Sama, I'll let you know about that a little bit later. And then throughout June, things are getting busier and busier and very interesting. And we might be doing, I can't jinx it right now. I'm not going to do it. We're still in this freaking pandemic. Enough. Okay, we're done. But thank you. We're going to finish with Return of Django. The other thing that I need to stress is that you know what you're doing in a club setting too. Like we're kind of like we're circling around it, but yeah, the music that you're making and producing, it moves. Like, you know, it can take you there. It's not like a club dilettante where it says I had a bunch of presets with GarageBand and put them together and here's my song. This is bullshit. You're actually making stuff that can work in DJ land. Works on the floor, can take you there. So well done. Keep at it.
Thank you. No, okay. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Thank you. This is Sama, Seattle Circuit Music and Art. Be well, be safe, wear a mask. Think about our friends in India and in South America. Craziness going on in Colombia right now. Also, the world is a complicated place, and we're doing all we can here to make it better without screwing it up. Obviously. All right. Peace.